Today's podcast episode is sponsored by TherapyNotes, TherapyNotes.com. And if you'll go over and check them out, they are the #1 electronic health record system for counselors and therapists. They will provide everything you need to make your practice run smoothly and efficiently. And go check them out, TherapyNotes.com. And if you'll use the coupon code Gordon, just GORDON, you can get your first 2 months free. TherapyNotes.com. This is the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer, helping you to navigate your private practice journey. This is session number 141 of the Practice of Therapy podcast. Hello, folks. I'm Gordon Brewer. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're staying healthy and safe during these times, as we're still moving through just lots of strange stuff going on in the world in terms of the COVID stuff. Not going to dwell on that this episode, but anyway, I hope you're doing well. And glad you joined me for the podcast. If this is your first time listening in, glad you found us, glad you're here, glad you're with me on this journey. And for those of you that are coming back, glad you're back, and hope you've subscribed to the podcast wherever you might be listening to it. So in this particular episode, it's really kind of piggybacking on what we did last week, just on pivoting and transitioning in your practice. And sometimes I get things a little backwards. This episode might have been better to come out before that one, but it was kind of an afterthought. And so anyway, I just thought it was an important topic just because I'm getting a lot of questions about these things when people will email me and also in social media. And it's really just questions that I really kind of consider kind of back to the basics. Now, whether you've been in practice for a while or not, I think it's always important to go back and look at kind of how you're grounded in your practice and also the basics of running a private practice. So that's what I'm going to delve into in this particular episode, just talking about some basics. I've got my private practice startup guide, which is a free resource for you on the Practice of Therapy, practiceoftherapy.com. If you sign up for my email list, you'll get that sent to you for free. And it's a guide that I put together, a little booklet or book, or however you want to call it, that just goes through just some steps you can take in thinking about starting a private practice. And even if you've been in practice for a while, maybe there's some things in there that you hadn't thought about or just really want to kind of revisit for yourself. So in this episode, I'm going to kind of cover some of those things that are in the private practice startup guide, not in detail, but really just ways of thinking about how to run a practice and what are some of the basics that we need to know and we need to do when running a practice so that it's successful. I reconnected with my friend Julie Harris over at Green Oak Accounting. And Green Oak Accounting, if you don't know about them, you're going to be hearing more from her because she's starting a podcast. But Green Oak Accounting is an accounting firm that specializes in working with private practice owners and mental health providers, and that's all they pretty much do. So they are experts when it comes to the financial side of private practice and also just having a good accounting system and a good accountant to back you up in your business. But anyway, she's starting her podcast, and she had me as a guest on her for one of her launching podcasts, and we talked about things that why private practices fail. And so it kind of led me into thinking about, okay, it's probably a good idea for me to kind of go back and revisit some basics, because a lot of times we can kind of forget those things and kind of get lost in the weeds. And I think whenever that is the case, we got to get back to basics. So anyway, we're going to get to that here in a minute. One of the things I wanted to remind you of is for the month of August, August 2020, I've got a discount that I'm offering. It's kind of August is my birthday month, so my way of kind of helping you celebrate my birthday. That sounded terrible, but I'm really not that conceited. But anyway, regardless, there's a discount code, promo code, and if you use that code, you can get any of my digital products or courses at 20% off. And so that promo code is just simply August 2020, the abbreviation of August, AUG 2020. And there'll be links here in the show notes for you to get to those resources and find out if there's stuff there that might be of interest and might be of help to you. And that includes the G Suite for Therapists course, the Money Matters in Private Practice course, also all of my digital products that are housed on the Gumroad platform. So, and if you'll just go to practiceoftherapy.com and go to the cool resources button and click that, and you will be able to see all that I have available. So without further ado, let's get into talking about some of the basics and getting back to basics. You know, one of the things I love about doing this podcast every week is just the responses I get from people. You know, every week I get several people that will contact me just letting me know that they're listening to the podcast and that they find it helpful, which that's the whole purpose in me doing the podcast. But what's interesting to me, though, is just really some of the themes that come up of things that people ask. And in last week's podcast episode, you know, we talked about pivoting and transitioning your practice. And one of the things that is unique about the practice of therapy, or well, really just this whole niche that we're in or whatever, is I realize that people are at different levels within their private practice journeys. There are those folks that are just getting started or really trying to figure out kind of the nuts and bolts of how to even get started in a practice. I know when I first started my practice, there was very little information on having to on how to start a practice, and which is one of the reasons that I was just kind of motivated to start the practice of therapy. But there are a lot of basics that I think are important for people to know, and so in this episode, that's one of the things I want to kind of go back to, or just some back to the basics of just really thinking about what it is that is needed in order to have a successful practice. And this is stuff that I've learned through my own successes and failures. I've had a lot of failures along the way, which you learn from, but also just what I've learned from other clinicians and conversations we've had. So that's what this particular episode is going to be about. One of the things that happened this past week as well is that I was got to reconnect with my good friend Julie Harris, who is the person behind Green Oak Accounting. If you hear a little rustling here, it's because a cat is trying to jump on me while I'm recording this. But anyway, Julie and I, Julie's getting ready to launch her podcast, which I'm so excited about, and you're going to hear more about that and Green Oak Accounting and what they do. But she had me do a recording for one of her episodes, and that was really kind of the topic was, what have I learned about reasons that people don't have a successful practice? And I think it's because the people that I've seen struggle in practice is because they don't have some of the basics in place. So anyway, that's what we're going to talk about today, are just some of the basics of being in private practice. So for any of you that have visited my website and also signed up for my email list, or to get on my distribution of emails that I send out every week and just resources that I provide. One of the things you'll get is the free private practice startup guide that I wrote. And it really kind of, I won't go over all the details of that here in this podcast because it would be awfully long. But one of the things that I would encourage you to do, if you haven't done so already, is to download that, or is to get the download. And you can just go to practiceoftherapy.com and you'll see several links there to be able to download that or get that sent to you by email. But in that guide, I kind of outlined just kind of what, at least to me, are the steps that a person needs to kind of go through in order to start a private practice. It doesn't cover it all. I mean, there's just too much to cover in just one, little 28-page booklet. But but I want to kind of go over today in this episode some of the highlights of that and things that I tend to think about in talking with people about starting a private practice. So first of all is just one of the things, and you'll hear this from me again, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about this, but one of the things that I think you always need to begin with is your why. And so really thinking about in depth and really having clarity for yourself as to why you want to start a private practice versus just working for someone else. As you've heard me say before in other episodes, private practice isn't for everyone. And I think you have to have a bit of a mindset shift from being an employee to becoming a person that is self-employed. You have to really kind of get your head around that. And so that's an important step, and just really looking at your reasons why you want to be in private practice. So one of the things is, I think for most people is that they just really want some of the autonomy that all of being in private practice brings, and just being able to be your own boss, set your own schedules, all of those great things that being in private practice affords us. So the first thing to think about is just what sort of business model you want to use in your practice, because like it or not, being in private practice is running a business, and you have to be able to have a little bit of, if not a lot, of business savvy in running your practice. So again, in the private practice startup guide, there are some links there to one of the most popular blog posts that I did early on was just business models of private practice, of just thinking about different ways to set up a practice, everywhere from just being a solo practitioner, sole proprietor, all the way up to setting up a group practice, or even a large group practice for that matter. And there's lots of different ways to set those things up. One thing that obviously is going to be needed is a place or a method to meet with clients, because that is what we do as therapists and counselors and social workers and psychologists. We meet with clients, and we have to have a private space to do that. And as we all know, with the times we're in, telehealth has changed, has been the predominant way of providing services. And so essentially one of the things is that you can have a practice that is online. And that's a huge game changer in terms of saving costs and being able to cut down on overhead, which is the cost of doing business. So that's something to consider. And I've heard from a lot of people that are getting started now, and they're just, quite frankly, just starting online without even having an office space. The one thing, too, just about our professions is now more than ever is a great time to go into private practice or to be a mental health provider, because there is a shortage of us folks, and there are just lots of opportunities for growth and that sort of thing. But you need to set it up correctly in order to, you can't just hang out a shingle and hope that things will go well. But and also your geographic area has a lot to determine the needs that are there. But nonetheless, what we do day in and day out as mental health providers is something that is just so much needed. So it's a great time to be in private practice. So in addition to just thinking about your why, also thinking about how you want to set up your business model or your way of providing services. The other thing that is, and this is the one that I think is probably the most intimidating to people, but is just really understanding the financial side of private practice and really understanding what it takes financially and also how to run a business. As you've heard me mention on several others, we've got a course out, Money Matters in Private Practice. It's an e-course that's available, and you can get to that by going to practiceoftherapy.com/money matters. And I teamed up with Julie Harris again from Green Oak Accounting on that particular project, and it's a great resource, and it just goes into detail with the nuts and bolts of being in private practice, the financial side of that. But one mistake that I think a lot of people make when going into private practice is they jump into it too quickly. And one of the things that you've got to do is make sure that you've got a financial buffer for yourself. So I think if you're going into private practice, and even if you've been in practice a while, this is a good exercise to do. I know it's been something I've been working on over the last several months because of all the changes with COVID and all of that sort of thing. It's kind of changed the landscape of the financial side of my practice. And so one of the things that I think is good to do is really have a clear picture about what sort of income you need from your practice to support your lifestyle. I think a lot of times people get too simplistic and they think, oh, I'm going to hang my shingle out and people are just going to flock to me and I'm just going to make lots of money and I'm going to be so happy. Well, it doesn't work exactly that way. One of the things that you need to do as a business owner, and this is just, it holds true also for your personal finances, you really need to have a financial buffer. And I was in my conversation with Julie. We really recommend anywhere at the minimum 2 months of both what it takes to replace your income, what you pay yourself, and what it takes to keep the business going. So in other words, if you went, a minimum of 2 months would be the starting place, but really about 6 months or more is even better. So for example, if you didn't see any clients for a month, would you be able to pay yourself plus be able to cover your expenses? And so one of the things in getting started that I really recommend is to really put a lot of effort into creating that buffer for yourself. For those folks that might be transitioning from agency work, what I did when I started my practice is that I did it part-time, and because I had my income from the agency I was working for, I didn't feel the financial pressure of having to get income from my private practice. It was almost like the private practice income was really just kind of icing to the cake, so to speak. And so when I made the decision to move fully into private practice, in other words, quit my full-time job, I spent 6 months, and it might even been a year, I can't remember now, just taking all the profits that I made from the private practice and saving that away, and then tracking that so that I knew that when I hit a certain amount, which was an amount that covered 6 months of income and 6 months of expenses, all of that, once I had that in the bank and I knew that I had that buffer there, then I was able to resign from my agency job. And I think that's a very good way to go about it. One one of the things about building a private practice is that you've got to have, as my friend Dr. David Hall says, you've got to have a bit of intestinal fortitude to be able to stand the ups and downs of the practice, because there will be some months where your income will be low, but your expenses will still be there. You still need to pay yourself. And then the other months where you'll have just a huge month where you'll just have a lot of income. And that's kind of a natural progression with most private practices, is to be able to have, is having that fluctuation in what you bring in. The other thing about starting a private practice is obviously you need to have a way to get clients. And that's when we tend to think about the M word, marketing, or being able to get people to know who you are and be able to find you. I love Allison Pereir's description of marketing. Allison is a fellow private practice consultant, and she has abundance practice. I believe that I'm saying that right, Allison. But anyway, she talks about marketing as just being able to help people find you so that you can help them. And I love that description of that, because that doesn't feel like we're being pushy or salesy, and you do not have to be pushy or salesy when it comes to marketing. Marketing is just simply relationship building, is making sure that you're putting yourself out there to where people can find you, because believe me, people are looking for us. People want help, and people want to be able to connect with the right person, find people that can help them with the things that they're struggling with. So 2 parts of marketing that I tend to think about. There are 2 kind of aspects of that. One is just simply networking, being able to build relationships within your community, and that's with other professionals, other colleagues, also with doctors, clergy people, anyone that might potentially refer to you. The more that you can make them aware that you're there and you're available and you are taking new clients. The other part of that is with the niche that you define for yourself. It's so important to really kind of define a specialty area for yourself. Again, that could be a whole episode here just on defining your niche, but being able to be known as the person that works with these types of clients or certain types of clients. So when I first went into private practice, there were very few marriage and family therapists in our town. And so I really got to be known as the marriage guy, the marriage counselor. And so even today, for some reason in our region, there aren't that many MFTs. And so there are a lot of folks that come to us because we offer marriage counseling and marriage therapy. So again, that's a broad niche, but you can also define it more. And all of that ties into your networking of being able to put yourself out there. The other part of marketing, and this is what I like to refer to as SEO, your search engine optimization, and that is just your web presence. And it is so important to have a website that people can find. You can build a website, you can put it out there, but if you don't have that search engine optimization, you're not going to be able to, people aren't going to be able to find you. Couple of resources on that I'll mention here. My friend Jessica Tepana is really an SEO guru, and we'll have links here in the show notes to Jessica's website and what she does. But also being able to, if you're a little intimidated by the tech side and just doing all of that SEO stuff and that sort of thing, you should always feel free to outsource that. And the people that I recommend for outsourcing as far as websites, and they are really very much the experts, is Brighter Visions. And if you'll just go to brightervision.com/Gordon, and if you'll use the coupon code Gordon, I think it is. We'll double check that. But if you use that link, you can get a month free of their services and really just try them out. But they just they build beautiful websites, and they'll work with you individually to build the kind of website that represents who you are. If your website isn't bringing you people, then you need to really check up on that. One of the things that I will say is that I would say probably 80% of the new clients that we get come because they found our website. And if you think about it, if you're looking for anything in this day and time, you're going to Google it first. And so you want to be able to come up on the top side of that, come up on the top end of the search pages when people are searching for your services or searching for you. So that's the marketing piece. Networking with people, building relationships in your community, and then also making sure that you've got a good website presence. The other thing that I want to mention here is just, again, going back to the financial piece, is just understanding how all of the money flows through your practice. And what you really need in order to do that are systems and processes in place. And the systems and processes, when I mention that is really just building a platform for yourself. In other words, either through an electronic health record system like TherapyNotes, or being able to set up a system like with Google G Suite, of being able to have a way to track everything that happens within your practice. Also automating those tasks, because as you grow, one of the things that will happen is that you can get real busy with a lot of stuff that really doesn't bring you in any income. And so that's when you want to begin to automate and outsource. Now, one of the things I'll mention about outsourcing, and this is again a conversation that Julie Harris and I had, is one of the big mistakes that people make is they really create for themselves a mindset about money that doesn't really work when it comes to business. And so let me explain a little bit about that. One of the things about being able to run a business is you've got to be able at different times be able to invest in your business. So investing either your time, which when you're starting out, you're going to have a lot of time, and that's the time to kind of bootstrap and do, think of it as a learning period, thinking about, being able to set up things on your own if you're comfortable with that. All of those things is an investment of your time, and you should be able to, at least over time, be able to get a return of the investment of your time in your practice. In other words, it's going to pay off. So spending time on getting your website right, spending time on getting your systems and processes set up right, will make the flow of things go much better once you start to grow and start getting a lot of clients. The other part of just thinking about your mindset, and particularly your money mindset, is not to be afraid to spend money. One of the things that I hear from people, and I think, again, this goes back to the mindset, is they're afraid to spend money on things that are going to give them a return on their investment. And I think that's one example of that would be like a Psychology Today profile or Psychology Today listing. It costs about $30 a month. That is absolutely a good investment, because if you got just one client from that, it would pay for itself. The other part of it is being able to spend your time, spend your money on things that are going to free up your time. So, for example, one of the resources I have is the Session Note Helper, which is just simply a system that you use within Google G Suite that allows you to check off some boxes on a Google form, and then it produces a document, in narrative format of what you checked off on the form. So it really streamlines your note taking and saves you a lot of time. You can create a session note in 5 minutes or less using that system. Now, part of one of the reasons that system works is because of an add-on that you can get. That again, all of this is HIPAA secure, called Form Publisher. Now, one of the things that I hear people kind of balk at is Form Publisher has a free version, but it only allows you 20 documents for it to convert over in a month's period for the free version. And so people will kind of balk at spending $78 a year in order to get the unlimited use of that. Well, if you break that down by month and you think about the amount of time that will save you, again, it pays for itself. If you were to free up the ability to write notes in 5 minutes or less, think how many more clients you could see, and again, it brings you in money. Again, think about the ROI. And that's something that I think people, in going into private practice, it's a good idea to save money. It's a good idea to bootstrap in the beginning stages, but don't be afraid to outsource. Another one is paying people in order to answer your phones and to do the phone calls and all of that. Yes, they're not going to do it like you would do it, but to be able to let go of that, to turn that over to somebody else is going to free you up. If you were able to spend, say for example, you were able to pay somebody $200 a month to do your virtual assistant work. And by doing that, it was going to enable you to bring in more clients. And so by bringing in more clients, here's some figures to think about. If I spent $200 and it brought in $1,000 extra dollars for me that month because I had more clients, that's a good investment. It's simple math. So think about in terms of spending money on your practice in terms of return on investment. If it's not going to bring you a return on your investment, I wouldn't do it. So anyway, that was a little bit of a tangent there. But again, getting back to the basics about starting a practice, it's important to think about those things. So real quickly, I realize I've been talking a while here now. Quick review. Think about your why in just getting back to basics, why you want to do. Look at your model of wanting to practice, how you want to do that, whether it's in an office, face-to-face with people, or doing telehealth, looking at understanding that. Understand your own personal financial situation and understand and have in mind how much you need to bring in from your practice in order to pay yourself to maintain the lifestyle that you need for yourself. The other thing to think about is really making sure that you understand and know the financial workings of a practice, understanding about business finance, understanding the small business part of being in a practice is such important information to have, because practices do fail because they don't understand the financial side of their practice, understand cash flow, understand profit and loss, and all that sort of thing. And again, you can learn more about that using if you'll get the Money Matters in Private Practice e-course that I have available. Again, that's practiceoftherapy.com/money matters. The other thing is in understanding all of that is in understanding the importance of creating a financial buffer for yourself, having money in reserve for those slow times, or even times like we've just gone through or going through with COVID. I would not have been able to survive COVID if I had not have had the financial buffer that we had, because there was a lag time and things slowed down and wasn't having the income that we had. I know that looking back at my numbers, April March and April, when COVID first hit, we hit a big dip in our income. And so by having that financial buffer there, we were able to weather the storm, able to get through, and things are turning out okay with that. The other thing is just thinking about marketing your practice, and that's just simply building relationships and also making sure that you can be found online. Again, real important stuff in terms of making sure that you've got a steady referral for sources for yourself, steady referrals coming in, and that builds the cash flow by having those sessions, kind of in the bag. The other part is being able to make sure that you've got systems and processes in place to be able to automate things and also outsource things. And again, being able to think about the importance of outsourcing as a form of return on your investment, to be able to pay somebody else to do those things that they can do that doesn't use up your time, because your time is best spent in the therapy room with clients, and that's where your income is going to come from, the predominant part of your income. Again, we can talk about passive income sources and all of that. That might be a whole another episode in and of itself. So anyway, hopefully this has been helpful information for you, and just thinking about getting back to basics of just really understanding what it takes to run a private practice. Well, folks, I hope that this episode's given you a few things to think about, and just really thinking about some basics again. I think it's always good, as I said at the beginning, to ground ourselves in just some basic things around running a business, running a practice, in order to keep our practices successful and running smoothly. And so hopefully this was helpful information for you. Be sure to check out today's sponsor for the podcast, TherapyNotes, therapynotes.com. They're who I use in my practice. And as I mentioned in the podcast episode, it's so important to have systems and processes in place to help you automate more. And TherapyNotes is the one I rely on most within my practice. And they are the number one provider of electronic health record systems for counselors and therapists, and they have support that is just second to none. And I'm so thankful that I have them in my practice. So be sure and check them out, therapynotes.com, and you can use the coupon code Gordon, just GORDON, and get 2 months of their services for free. And also take advantage of the August discount, and you can use the promo code August 2020, just AUG 2020, and you can go to the Cool Resources button and get 20% off all of my digital products, and also the e-courses that are available directly from Practice of Therapy. So be sure and take advantage of that. Be sure and subscribe to the podcast if you haven't done so already. Thank you for those of you that do and leave reviews. Those are always helpful, and I do look at those, and I'm thankful for the reviews that people are giving. And be sure to share it with your friends. If there's something that you hear in one of the episodes that you like, be sure and share it. That way more people can find out about us, and we can help more people be successful in private practice. So look forward to talking to you again next week, and we've got lots of great guests lined up, so I'm looking forward to you hearing from them. So take care, folks. Stay safe out there, and stay healthy. Take care. Been listening to the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer. Please visit us at practiceoftherapy.com for more information, resources, and tools to help you in starting, building, and growing your private practice. And if you haven't done so already, please sign up to receive the free private practice startup guide at practiceoftherapy.com. The information in this podcast is intended to be accurate and authoritative
concerning the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, or producers are rendering legal, accounting, or clinical advice. If you need a professional, you should find the right person for that.